Ain't nothing worse than a smart dumb.
Los Angeles Nakers.
All right, so good afternoon, everybody. Once again, we are back at it, back beginning. This is the first interview that I have for the Smart Dumb podcast. I'm really excited. Excited to have gotten off of my hiatus and excited to get, right to having a conversation. So today I'm going to be joined, and some of the other interviews I've done, people feel away that I let them introduce themselves. But this is a situation where the young lady does not like, there's a particular way that she wants her name said. It doesn't. So it's like, this is why I err on the side of caution. So if you don't mind sharing that, we're going to let you introduce yourself first, and I'll get to that question. So welcome to the show. Please tell us who you are.
Oh, man. Thanks for having me. My name is Tia.
Mm-hmm.
Am I supposed to say anything else?
No, we'll get to that. Yeah,
okay.
I'll bring this up. So what? We go back a little bit.
Yeah.
So why is it Tia? Why is it why is it not? Why is it Tia? You know what I mean?
I guess my government name is a made up name.
Oh.
It's made up from. I'm named after my father.
Mm.
And my real name is based off of his pet name or nickname, as they call it here in the States, which is now his legal name here in America. And I just find that people just have a really hard time with it for some reason. And if they happen to get it right, like, I guess syllable-wise or whatever, they still pronounce it wrong. And so when I left for college, I just stopped giving it to people because I felt bad for correcting people, but it made me cringe all the time hearing my name pronounced incorrectly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to feel this guilt as a child for wanting to give people a nickname because I had so many classmates who had like an American name or whatever, but I felt like my name didn't really qualify for one. So I never had that nickname in class, and after a while I just got fed up. So it's like no more.
I hear you. Hey, your name is your name, and it's crazy. I'm sure people still messing up Tia somehow.
Yeah. You think it would be easy for people?
Listen, mine is Mel. That's all, and it's like the way that people jump through hoops to make it wrong.
Yes, it's like you have to be trying to mess this up.
So I get all that. That was that whole everything about that. Finding yourself apologizing for them messing up.
Yes.
It's just getting mentally exhausting.
Yes. You get me then. You get me.
I do. I promise I do. Okay. All right. Very good. So part of that in the midst of answering that question, so you mentioned in the States, outside of the States. So where are you from? Where you are, or are you born outside of the States?
Yeah. So my entire family is from Jamaica, pretty fresh off the proverbial boat.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
First generation raised here.
Oh, okay. So you were born stateside, or?
Yeah, I'm like, it's weird. This generation of my family, I'm like, most of us were born in Jamaica, but I was not. So.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. And so then, excuse me. And so then, ignoring the current, situation we're in, nobody moving. What's your frequency as far as heading back to Jamaica?
I was back home in November of 2019.
Okay.
But it was like for 24 hours. I literally went down there to get a shot and to take my grandmother down like some medical items, and I came right back. Okay. So I wasn't there for very long. In the last like decade or so, I haven't really gone much, but that's because I've been prioritizing trying to travel to new places. I do travel quite a bit. So I've been trying to travel to new places, and that doesn't leave very much time working a 9-to-5 job to, go home very often. So.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, so what was the process? What was the journey that brought you to upstate New York for school?
They gave me the most money. The funny thing about it is that I knew nothing. So for the listeners, I went to Rochester Institute of Technology, upstate New York, and for undergrad. And I had never heard of that school before. I find that most, I guess you could say like laymen have never heard of RIT before. It's not a household name. Typically people within industry, usually like engineering, business, art, that's what the school is mostly known for, are people who have heard of it. So long story short, I had an aunt who at the time worked for Fannie Mae, I believe. It was either Fannie Mae or the World Bank. And she had quite a few colleagues who went to RIT, and I guess with her talking about having a niece applying for college and stuff, they recommended I apply there. So I just kind of did to shut the family up. It was an easy application. I didn't have to do anything extra. And they, like, at the time had a really bad men to women ratio. So that, in addition with being an ethnic minority, they're just throwing money at you to get you to come.
Sure. Okay.
That's honestly, money was really is what it boiled down to.
I mean, listen, there's nothing wrong with that one either. I undergrad, I ended up going to FAMU, which I ended up loving, but that was the reason why. Is my parents narrowed it down for me. It's like, okay, who's giving you this money? They gave money on top of. They ended up giving me, so I was like, yeah, this is what you got to do. So it's not.
Not a sexy story.
yeah. It don't have to. Right. It can be that simple, and then once you get there, then you make it. You
right.
Develop your own story. So, but now RIT. Some people are very familiar. Some have never heard of it. While you were there, I was in University of Rochester for grad school, and the same. Like there are some, and that's an amazing, a big name and a big deal. And there's some people that are like, okay, it's
sound
cool.
good.
Right. So as far as your RIT experience, like once you actually got there, how could you describe it, summarize it? I don't know. Is that a big story, small story?
I don't know if I would say it's a big story. I mean, I guess for context, like I grew up in the suburbs of DC.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I still live like 15 minutes outside of DC right now. So, and not like from a bragging standpoint, but we're, on paper, one of the richest Black counties in the country.
Yeah.
So not even in terms of wealth, but just sheer numbers of people. One of the reasons I didn't gravitate towards an HBCU experience is because that's basically been my whole K through 12 experience. I've always been around mostly Black students. I had memories of Black teachers in elementary school. I had them in middle school. I had them in high school. I had Black administrators. So that was not something that was, foreign to me. And at a very early age, like thinking about college, I recognized that there was a lot of privilege in that experience, and that most likely I was not going to be in a situation post-college where I would be fortunate enough to work in a work environment where it would be mostly Black. Mm-hmm. So I needed to become accustomed and learn how to maneuver in white spaces or not mostly Black spaces. So that was like the main reason why I wasn't looking for an HBCU experience. And Howard was down the street. I mean, Howard Homecoming and all these other things, not to say that or suggest that that is the totality of an HBCU experience, but I think that's a lot of why some people choose to go to HBCUs, in addition to the fact that they need to be around more people who look like them. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have a need for either one of those experiences. So getting back to what my RIT experience was, because of that, I kind of got what I was looking for. And that wasn't necessarily a positive thing, being, the Black spot in the room, people who, being around people who had never seen a Black person in person before, which wasn't always a negative experience. Some people were just naturally inquisitive, wanted to know certain things. People who had, had a high school class of 20 or 30 people. Just that sort of exposure was good to have, and definitely a lot of valuable lessons into how to move into spaces that I wasn't necessarily accustomed to. And then, the, I guess, not so great side of it, where the complicated racial aspects of it, I definitely won't lie about that. Had more than enough, dark, racial experiences at RIT. But, like I said, I'm all the richer for it. It prepared me well for how to deal with a lot of those microaggressions and then not so subtle, racial overtones and things in the real world, because they do happen.
Right.
But then I guess from a social aspect, I kind of love the intimacy of RIT, and that'll sound weird. It's not that small of a school, but it's also not a huge school at the same time. Right. But then it felt like a school within a school in terms of the minorities. Like, we were small in number, but I didn't really have to interact with anyone outside of us, outside of class, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So we all knew each other well. It was very strange first coming on campus because you knew immediately who was new. Or I'll just leave it at that, who was new. And so for people who are new, people are automatically like, okay, well, who are you? And you need to come to so-and-so's house or this event or whatever, because we need to get you like in the fold sort of thing. And coming from a space where it wasn't that intimate, it was kind of like, okay, well, I don't talk to strangers. And like, who are you? And like, I'm not going to anybody's house sort of thing. So getting accustomed to that sense of community, that was like different. And it was also really good because everybody really looked out for each other. And I don't know that I would have necessarily gotten that experience in a different type of environment. I feel like that was a really long-winded answer, but
this is why we're here. That was good. That was good. So so that was that was interesting. So you specifically were cool on personally dealing with the HBCU experience. You were like, I don't need that, basically because I have, how you was already raised, and you kind of wanted to prepare yourself for probably what real world would look like.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But then even getting there, so it wasn't. So you were both like fair on both sides. So there were a couple challenging experiences, but we were going to have that no matter where you were, as far as growth of the people around you, having to educate others, whether that's what you signed up for or not. But at the same time, there were plenty of, it was an environment that you grew to enjoy.
And in a lot of aspects, and let me also like say there were a lot of negative experiences, like on all levels, like personally with other peers, within living environments. And when I say these negative experiences I'm talking about are centered around race. I'm not talking about your average, like, I don't like my roommate type of situations. We're talking about with staff, we're talking about with professors, all on all levels. There was a lot of that from start to finish in my time at RIT. I will never ever shy away from that or make it seem like it was something that other than what it was. But like I said before, I think it was very good preparation, trial run for real life. And I'm not saying that every person needs to have that experience in college, but per se, but it's very good training for real life, because I stand by the majority of us will not have the luxury of working in a space where we're surrounded around people who look like us, or people who are there genuinely for your growth and your development and looking out for you. And so you have to learn how to advocate for yourself. And I think college in general does that, but I think when you add that sort of racial component, it takes it to another level of learning how to like play that game and maneuver and, just make sure you look out for yourself. Because when you get to college, a lot of times they're like, you can call your parents, but that when you have issues, that school's not interested in listening or hearing anything that your parent has to say, because they're like, this kid is 18. Your parent really has no like jurisdiction here. Right. Like in the way that your parent will call your school in high school or something like that to challenge something that's happening. You have to do it yourself.
Yeah.
So to me, it was better to learn how to do those things there and figure it out versus having to figure it out like in real life, where like it matters about you. It's affecting your pocket maybe, or things of that nature. In college, nothing you're doing or saying is affecting my pocket. So.
Yeah, it's still kind of a sandbox to kind of experiment.
Yeah.
It's a level above high school and a level above all of grade school. But excuse me, but still opportunity to kind of prep. Okay. So however much time you want to devote to it, then so you talked about your personal experience, as far as choosing to go to a PWI versus
Mm-hmm.
an HBCU. That has a very spicy,
It is.
repetitive, exhausting social media,
Mm-hmm.
conversation. Did you, on a general sense, did you have anything additional you wanted to contribute to that without anybody live, without anybody jumping on your throat because you didn't
Yeah.
say what I wanted you to say, so it's wrong? Because
Yeah.
like
I mean, in general, like you said, I just think the conversation is kind of stupid. Because at the end of the day, to me, it's about the education.
right.
So I think there's a very valid place for and need for HBCUs on different levels. So like I kind of touched on before, I think there's a personal element to it. Like I personally have family members who grew up in this area in the private school system, and therefore were that black spec K through 12. And the one family member I'm thinking of in particular, she ended up going to Howard. She needed that experience. And I'm not even saying that everybody in her K through 12 experience need that experience, but for her, she needed that. She needed to be affirmed by having Black professors and being around a wealth of Black students and a wealth of Black students from different places so that she could learn more about herself and sort of have a mirror to herself. I didn't need that personally because I grew up in the opposite scenario. I was surrounded by all of that Blackness K through 12. So it's not to say I wouldn't have been enriched in some ways by going to a HBCU, but for where I was, I just didn't think that I thought I could get more from the PWI for the reasons I stated earlier. So I just think it depends on the student and what they need personally and then what they need professionally. And then also I did start to apply to Howard actually, and this is no shade against Howard, but I'm just speaking in general. Mm-hmm. I think it's also a question of subject matter too, like what you're going to or planning to study. Yeah. So that was a challenge that I had because I wanted to at least apply to a couple, even though I had this like game plan of, what I was trying to get out of my experience. But the challenge that I had was finding one that offered a degree program similar to or exactly what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. And I know that is very deeply connected to how HBCUs are funded or lack thereof. And so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but there's just a lot of variables that go into sort of making that choice and then also making the choice that's best for you. Mm-hmm. And I think if people approach that discussion with the mindset that those different types of institutions offer different things, and discovering what it is that student needs and which one can offer that and which one can offer it best. And then there's also the money factor too. So like if you're an average student, as in like you're not a valedictorian or your SAT scores are not like in the top 10 percentile or something like that, like you're not going to get the best financial package from an HBCU, or you're not an athlete. Odds are you're not going to get a ton of money from them. Strategically, you're going to get the most money from a PWI because they need you for certain metrics. So if money is what you need, then strategically, I probably wouldn't bank all of my money on going to HBCU because they're not going to give me the most.
Okay. Yeah. So as far as like the major choice, like I know that's one that would have been that have been, that somebody would feel like they got to counter it. Of course, if you absolutely were dead set on going to one, yes, across the country, across the East Coast, you could have found that program to suit you. But then it came back to, I guess, one of the things that becomes a problem. I think some of us, I went to HBCU, so some of us are so busy, get too caught up trying to defend the validity of them.
Yes.
That then some of us then go to the other extreme and say we all must do that. And
Right.
that is also false.
Right. Right.
You know?
And I thought about that, but I didn't really want to say it because then that also makes people defensive.
Yeah.
I think I think some of that goes back to like kind of using whiteness and anything that is like all encompassing of whiteness as a metric for success or a metric for quality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think inherently we still have that sort of in our psyche, whether people want to admit it or not. So even without being like gaslit, people become very defensive about the HBCU topic, as if people are automatically saying like the quality in HBCU is lesser than a PWI just because it's an HBCU. And then it becomes this whole, well, it's not just about homecoming, it's not just about this, it's not just about that. And it's like, relax, like, you know, it's not all that. Like it doesn't have to be that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, just the whole fact, that we can't. It's just another example of this kind of, it's the social media need to. You're supposed to walk on eggshells if you're not going to offend anybody else, and it's like, and so you end up prefacing so many. Oh, this is my experience, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we can't even just have the
Yeah.
conversation. Let you have your thought and you have my thought, because I'm going to find a way, to get hung up on. Oh, you said you can get more money.
Yeah.
That's your experience. And it was a legitimate idea.
I also think if we could as a community reframe the conversation into like focusing on the education piece, not the quality part, but the receiving the education. So like if the focus is on, okay, if you want to go to school, because that's a whole nother discussion about whether college is even required or whatever to be successful. But like, if you want to go to school, the focus is on getting the degree. Where you choose to get the degree really should not be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, as long as you're getting the experience that you need and that you want.
Right.
So if that means you have to transfer, whatever it is, at the end of the day, I want you to get that degree.
Right.
And get the experience that is going to set you up for post-college life.
Right.
Any details beyond that, to me, they're not irrelevant, but that's not the focus.
Right.
And if we could switch the focus of the conversation to that, like, purview, I think we would be in a lot better space.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. I can agree with that. So, okay. So what, you said undergrad. Did you go to grad school?
Yeah, so I went to grad school at Hopkins. Yeah.
So you came back kind of local. I mean, so yeah, being in the States, you was pretty much around the DMV area or DC.
Well, so I started undergrad as an art major, and then I ended up graduating with an engineering degree. Long story, but not really important. So needless to say, I went about the normal trajectory, went into the engineering space, like full-time work, and in my particular I guess niche of engineering, it's like, it's not manufacturing, but it's like centered around manufacturing sort of. So in that respect, it's very hard for you to find jobs where they're in like cities or, places like DMV or places like New York City. It doesn't really happen too often, although there are things available. And that was like the life I wanted to live, because I co-opted undergrad at Procter & Gamble, and so I was in Cincinnati, and I was like, I'm not about this Midwestern life. I'm not about this small town life. And I've had, several work experiences where I've been able to like travel across the country and see different plants and working atmospheres and stuff like that, enough to know that I'm not about that life of in terms of living. Like work was great, but then after I had to leave work, I'm like, this is not for me. So I was on a mission to get back to the DMV because I wanted to be around my family. And by that time, my niece had been born. I didn't want to miss like her growing up and stuff like that. So I ended up taking a job. My first full-time job after school was in Richmond. That was the closest I could get. And that was about an hour and a half drive from home or so. And I was there for about 2 years. And then I ended up in Delaware, which is like hour and a half in the opposite direction. And then I ended up in the federal government. So then I was finally back home after about 4 or 5 years after undergrad. And that's when I started grad school.
Okay. So a little bit of work experience and then
Yeah, it took me some time.
yeah, no, listen. My story and somebody's story is crazy than mine, and my story is, everybody's is unique.
Yep.
We're not going because the struggle Olympics. I
Yes.
don't want to do that either. Oh, nah, you ain't. That's not that bad. Listen to mine. It's like, and then then it doesn't even be that bad, but you gotta.
Yeah. Like, oh, what? Like, that's crazy.
Right, that's right. That's funny. So now either one of those situations, 1.5 towards Richmond, 1.5 towards Delaware, you found residents local to your job, or you actually were doing this big commute?
So when I was in Richmond, I had an apartment there.
Mm-hmm.
And then first by myself, and then with a roommate actually who I went to RIT with.
Okay.
And then when I was in Delaware, I actually was making the commute every day for like probably about 4 months. And then I started renting a room from some grad students just to have somewhere to sleep Monday through Thursday, and then I would go right back home.
Okay. Yeah. I think the first place that I was where that didn't even register to me at first. And then so I had Midwest experience. I was in Michigan for some Ford work. I grew up in Minnesota. I'm tripping like I'd never been to Midwest. But anyway, I'd be there for Ford, and along that way the conversation came with people were leaving whatever part of Michigan they are from to travel up to Dearborn. Where the HQ and all that is. So it's like 40, 50 mile commute, each one way every day. It's like,
it hurts. It hurts.
Right.
Sure. Definitely live that life for a while. Don't miss it.
No, I understand. Okay, so you had your grad school experience, and then I guess after that you returned into the workforce of the real world.
Actually, I worked full time.
While you was in grad school?
Yeah, I worked full time in grad school, and I was in grad school full time. So I did both full time. Yeah.
And still, and
it was
don't look 68 and all that.
I don't know how. Every once in a while, I tell people all the time, every once in a while I walk past and I look at that degree just to make sure it's real. Like, did they really give me that? Like, there's a couple of reasons why I look at it like that, but I just, I check it every once in a while just to make sure it's still valid. That stamp is still there.
Yeah, like I had this nightmare that I just for some reason put myself, it did.
That really happened.
All right. Well, at least that happened and you got what you came for.
That's true. But I was on a mission because the agency I was with at the time was paying for some of my classes.
Okay.
And that was the only, like, outside of my pocket and loans money that I was getting. So I was like, and then the position that I had there was one of those not to exceed a certain amount of time positions with the government. So I was like, for the money reason and for the reason of having to go back in the workforce, I'm like, it makes no sense for me to go back into the workforce in the midst of a degree. If I'm going to go back into the workforce, I need to have that degree so that I can leverage it to get more money.
Right.
So that meant that I had to be done with it by the time I left. And so that was the reason why I was like, I went full-time work, full-time school. So
and I can't say you're wrong. I mean, I've heard those stories of somebody. I mean, just a degree, experience, whatever. Once that company, like, I think a lot of people miss it. I didn't know it. Once that company, like, your biggest leverage is your foot in the door. Like, I'm sorry, your entry into the company. Once they already got you signed, you joined, they gave you the orientation. Most people aren't gonna get taken care of. Like, you're pretty much gonna hover right around where that spot is. You know, it's a wild game. It's a crazy game, and it's one a lot of, we'll just say black people because that's who I care about the most. So I'm rooting for.
Yes, that's fine.
But it's a lot. That's something that has not yet gotten passed on. So hopefully, like, the new, this next generation can get educated on that more. It's like, we come from a standpoint, we just, I'm so happy that they gave me this opportunity. So let me come in, let me do what I'm supposed to do. And then I have this kind of presentation for y'all. Like, look, I did all this. Like, so
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
My
we got you.
mother is actually one of the person who, she was talking more so about salary. Like, you're not gonna get anything more than like your average like 2 to 3% like raise per year. So it's like, she was like, if you're really looking for like a jump in salary and you want to stay within that company, you have to leave and come back or get whatever it is you're trying to get before you start.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has always been, my mindset. And I think also, I guess more so from like our elders generation, they're accustomed to going somewhere and staying there for like a lifetime, or like, the lifetime of their career.
Right.
Because they used to get perks. They used to get like, good insurance, a company car, like, all kind of
even a
crazy
pin
things. Yeah, all kind of crazy things. We don't get none of that no more. So it's like, we have to very much so think more about what you're getting out of the situation. And the minute you are not benefiting from that relationship, it's time to go.
Yes.
So when people try to shame us into well, you only stayed there for 2 years, or you only stayed there for 3 years, I got what I need to get and I left.
Right.
It's time to move on to the next thing. Right. Eventually, I think these companies will start to come around to this, notion that millennials are not giving you 40 years of work time for nothing.
For nothing.
Yeah,
that's it, right. I mean,
if you feed me, then I'll stay.
Right.
But the minute that I stop benefiting from this scenario, it's time for me to move on. Maybe I'll come back. Maybe I won't.
Right. That sounds like a company personal problem. You know what they say? They don't give cars. They don't give pens. You know what they give now? Happy hour parties. And I think that. And that's acknowledgement that they know they're putting people through hell. So it's like, here's this wine and some beer. You good? We'll see you next Monday?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, yeah, they wild for that. But no, it's that I'm even glad you talked about that too, as far as, they try to shame, again, what's that current generation into, like, why are you moving so fast? And it's like, because there's not a good reason to stay. There's not a good reason for me to stay. Like, you're benefiting from using me.
Right. And then we have so much more like on our plates. We're saddled with student loans. Mm-hmm. Then you want us to have kids. You want us to buy houses. What am I doing that with? Like, your pat on the back is not paying my mortgage, bro. Like, this is not giving my down payment. I need you got to work with me.
Right.
They can't cost a mortgage and a half a month. Like, I'm not signing up for that.
Yeah. That's what that challenge is for a lot of people that desire a big city, desire to reside in a big city. It's really hard to deal with all the expenses that it costs and offset it with the salary. Like, that's right. It's highly competitive for it.
Right. Really. And if it's not just a salary issue, it's also a time issue, because they a lot of times will expect you. And I think a lot of like new grads kind of like burden themselves with this expectation that, they're the first one in and the last one out. Like, somebody will see me and like, I'll get the promotion and blah, blah. Like, not you pay me for 8 hours of work and that's what you're going to get. And then I'm rolling out. Like, you want me to work 10, 12 hours. You're barely paying me anything that I can like pay my bills and then put something in savings or invest or do whatever else I want to do with it. And then you're going to work me like a dog, and then I got to beg for a promotion or beg for, whatever else. Like, I get a promotion, there's barely any more money. Like, nah, this is the reason why millennials and later are prioritizing themselves. Because you have to.
Yeah, and they should. So, yeah, no, that's another, they talk about the game a lot. And so part of the game is, your optics and the perception and everything. Mm-hmm. Part of the game is your confidence and knowing, I didn't slip in through nepotism. I didn't lie on my resume.
Right.
Like, I'm here because I'm good enough to be here. I'm gonna, you move and walk and present yourself like you're supposed to be here, and then that confidence permeates through.
Right.
That can matter just as much as, let me just make sure I'm doing all the things that somebody thinks I should be doing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So, a little bit of work before grad school, then during grad school, and then took that degree and kind of propelled what you were doing. And then eventually along the way, there was a working for self, or entrepreneurial type of idea that came, or maybe it had been, yeah, or maybe it had been in your mind?
Yeah, I would say it's been something that's been in my mind. And, you know, the more I get into different things, I think about like some of the silly things I used to do as a child that were kind of like entrepreneurial in spirit, but obviously didn't really go anywhere.
Okay.
But I had been blogging since like 2016 or whatever, and mostly around like beauty and travel, because again, like I said, I travel quite a bit, and people are always asking me about my hair. And it just got to the point where like I just got tired of answering the same questions over and over again.
One at a time.
So yeah, so I was like, well, it would be great if I had a place where I could kind of direct people to, like, if you have these sorts of questions, this is what I do, this is like what I use, you know, all that sort of thing. And also kind of showing people, like, so I'm big on like, I guess kind of thought process. So even like how I do things, and that might be just like the engineer in me, like how, you know, they kind of train your brain to work and kind of reason through choices and how something works.
Right.
And so, and I realized that sometimes when people ask me certain questions about something I do, or, well, I'll just say something I do, it's the thought process really that they're kind of getting towards, but not really knowing how to ask that question, or knowing that that's the question they want to ask, I guess. So even with my blogging kind of work, I would kind of approach it from that aspect of like, okay, this is how I'm thinking of it, and this is how I approach this problem that I was having. And this is how you should do it too. Because without getting into the depths of it, one of the problems that I find in the like kind of natural hair world is that you see something you like, you in your mind think that my hair looks like yours, and I want mine to look like my results to be like yours. And so I'm going to do whatever it is that Jamel's doing so that my results look like his results.
Right.
The problem with that is that our hair might not actually be the same, even though it looks the same.
Right.
And when you skip over doing like the logical reasoning as to how I got here or what I used, then you get disappointed because your results are not the same.
Right.
So if I can just show you, instead of just saying use ABC products and do 1, 2, 3 steps, why I'm doing ABC and 1, 2, 3, then you can do it for yourself and figure out, you know, what works for you without the disappointment.
Right.
The sidebar to that is a lot of people don't want to do that work, but that's that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have been, and I still have said blog, but it's such a challenge to get that sort of thing to make money, and then to when you do make money with it, to make money consistently.
Right.
So it's not ever, and I guess part of maybe my problem with that was not really looking at it like it was a business. It's kind of like looking at it as something I'm doing that I want to make money. Maybe that was the problem, but I don't know. So but I've always been you know, someone kind of reads and kind of looking around at things that you know, what can I come up with, like what problem can I solve, what product could I sell, or something like that. But then, you know, you have that barrier of capital and, like, you know, needing to be with the right people in order to make something shake. So looking for something simple enough that you can enter a market and make money. And I think that's always sort of been where I had some disconnect. But because I have often been in, I guess, circles with entrepreneurs and just kind of always reading about what other people are doing, I came across someone who is like now a serial entrepreneur, but was able to build his first like $1 million business in 30 days through local service businesses. And I just will always see his posts, which were always very detailed and free, more importantly, like how you can do the same thing. And again, that sort of like logical, like stepping through the process of things that made it very easy to repeat for someone else. Or even if you didn't want to copy it in the same way, apply it to something else.
Right.
So at some point he ended up creating a group to kind of help a group of people replicate the same results. And I think he had like a wildly popular launch your first $1 million business in 27 days post on Reddit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing that like 2 years ago, but then stopped because I was unemployed at the time. And then I recently restarted in January.
Okay.
So I'm like in the throes of that now. But yeah, so that's kind of been a wild ride. But I think I really, through all of that kind of reading and paying attention to what other people are doing, have been able to kind of refine what I wanted out of an entrepreneurial experience, which I think is very important, and not necessarily everyone gets the opportunity to do that, because sometimes business opportunities kind of fall in your lap. There's a problem and you inadvertently come up with a way to solve it, and then all of a sudden you have a business. But I think it's different when you're planning to be an entrepreneur and you're looking for an opportunity. In the same way that I now try to tell students coming out of high school to kind of look at choosing a career. Like, the career is important, yes, and I think that's the way that we kind of chose what we wanted to do in a lot of aspects. But I think it's also important to think about the kind of life you're trying to live. And sometimes that ends up filtering out the degree or the business before the business itself. And so I tell a lot of students that, like, the degree is cool because in your head you have a perception of what it's like to be a doctor or what it's like to be an engineer or a lawyer or whatever. But then we don't think about, okay, a lawyer is locked up in an office for X amount of hours and all they do is read and they don't see people, all these different components to it. And that's not the type of person I am. That's going to make me miserable. We don't think about that part. And so I love being an engineer, but I don't want to be at somebody's office, at the same office every day, having to clock in at X time and clock out at X time. I want to go out and explore. I want to be on my own time. So this lifestyle is not gelling with who I am as a person. And therefore, I'm not going to be happy, even though the context of that work is something I enjoy. And so I needed to choose a business that would allow me to have that freedom. So it wouldn't make sense for me to have a business that has a storefront, because that's the same setup. I have to be at that storefront 7 days a week now, probably.
Right.
5,
even more time.
And even more hours than the 8, because it's mine.
Right.
And that's just going to make me feel just as tied down as you showing up to somebody else's business.
Yeah.
So this particular opportunity with the local service business was one that I can do anywhere as long as I have a laptop and Wi-Fi. I can run from anywhere. I can employ people from around the world. And, like I touched on earlier, my family is Jamaican. I can employ somebody from Jamaica and give them more of an opportunity to make more money than they would probably be able to do at home. So it kind of like is bringing everything together for me. But literally, once this gets to the point where I can quit my job, I can go to wherever my heart desires for a month and still run my business. And so that having the space where I guess things that I've tried didn't work allowed me to realize what type of business space I need to be in, because again, that whole storefront thing is not going to work for me. Even though I had ideas of businesses that would be like that, but that's not going to work for me until I have enough money to pay somebody else to do it.
Right.
And I'm not there yet. So.
Yeah. Understood. Now that's great. This is a perfect time to go into those 4 quadrants, those 4 cash flow quadrants. I talked about it like 2 years ago, so it's a great time to bring it back up again. So you got employee, which is having the job. You got that self-employed, which is owning the job. So that was the category. Excuse me. That was the category in which you were just saying. It's like, okay, I have my own business, but it's a storefront, so I'm still I got to do this. It has to stay open. Now it's just more of my responsibility. There's the I, which is the investor. So there's a lot. That's a whole. There's plenty of ways to go about that, even more so now with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. And then there's the business owner, or the business where you have a system. So kind of what you're saying, you are now found that particular opportunity, which is going to let you continue. Excuse me again. is going to let you kind of operate, what it is that you're trying to do multiple ways without you physically having to be there. It's replicable, and that's why it can be done in different areas.
Right.
So that's one, is having that knowledge in the first place, and two is figuring out what it is that you can do to fit that mold.
Right.
Excuse me, coughing a lot. So, okay. And I mean, honestly, we're in that microwave society where everybody just wants to figure it out immediately. Like you had to have some of those other experiences to find what works and doesn't work before you could get where you are. And I guess, that kind of comes back to your point about intending to be an entrepreneur. That means you had a process, more information that you had to learn.
Right.
And, now it's fortunately you're getting to the point, it sounds like, that you're learned enough to get it started, but obviously the learning, it doesn't stop.
Right. That's definitely it. And I think sometimes maybe that's sort of the handicap we pick up as college grads, because that whole process of going to college kind of trains you to feel like you have to have a certain amount of not only knowledge, but skill and connections and all these other things before you get into something. And I think I can concede that college does handicap us in that sort of way. And maybe I shouldn't generalize. I see that. I don't know if other people see that, but I can see how any process where you have to train, and maybe not even college, but if you have to go to trade school or anything like that, we have to train before you're able to do something or get a certificate or a degree or whatever else, can sometimes put you in this mindset that you have to have a checklist of things accomplished before you can go to the next step. Right. And I think a lot of times with business is you just have to do it. You just have to start, because you're never going to have all your cards lined up the way everything has to be to cover everything in business. And sometimes, I think a lot of times actually with business it's that practical learning that you learn the most. So literally, even with this cleaning company, all I had in place when I launched it was the website that worked, able to collect payments, and someone to do the work, because my focus is running the business and not being in the business. So I don't do the cleaning. And that sets me up to scale the business so that I can be $1 million business as soon as possible, rather than if I'm doing the cleaning, I can't run the business as well and also do the work.
That's your time.
So you have to, right. So it kind of forces you to learn how, if you have control issues, to like let it go, because let it go and set up systems in place in order to, I guess, kind of control your quality. So, and then be able to, if you have to step out of it for whatever reason, someone else can look at, for the engineers, the SOPs, they can look at what you have there and replicate whatever it is that you were doing so that the business doesn't fall apart. That's how you have good systems in place. Right. So a lot of these things, you're not gonna know until you're faced with the problem. Yes. And then you fix the problem and document it so that the next time either you prevent it altogether, or the next time you're faced with the issue, you know exactly how to resolve it because you already did it.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, we can the merit for you got to start somewhere. So if you're in college and as a traditional ages, late teen, early 20s, then it's okay to say, yeah, you really don't have a foundation for any of this work. So yes, we need you to get started first. But yeah, a mistake that a lot of people do make that's very valid is, this is how life works. And some people are actually mature enough or got thrown into life, for different reasons as those early teenage years, that they already realized, like, nah, when I had this family situation, when I had my own challenge, I had to figure it out. It happened. I had to get out of it. Now I'm, different and stronger for it, hopefully. So it's, that's definitely, it can be useful when it had its season, when it had its time, but no, eventually, one of the biggest mistakes people can make is is that there even is a way to say, okay, I'm just going to have all this, that's career, that's relationships. I'm going to just have all this known.
Yeah.
And I'm going to dive into it and it's I'm going to get an A.
Yeah. And life doesn't work like that, and it's funny how I always find it very interesting how, I think socially we accept the idea that in certain parts of life, particularly with work, I think I see like 9 to 5 work, that, when opportunity knocks, you have to be ready. Like, there's that whole saying of like, you never have to get ready if you stay ready, and that whole, that whole mentality. But we don't transfer that same logic to other areas of life. So when you see people talk about relationships and they're like, oh, I'm not ready for this and I'm not ready for that. And it's like, okay, well, if your dream person showed up at your doorstep tomorrow, are you gonna be like, well, come back in 6 months because I'm not quite ready yet? Would you do that about your job if the job of your dreams was somebody offered it to you today? Are you gonna be like, well, I actually need 2 more certificates before I'm ready? Like, no, I'm taking that job and I'll figure it out. Like, I'm gonna fake it till I make it, and you're gonna have to fire me if you want me to leave. But I'm gonna be here until I figure it out. That's my job. I want it. And it's just funny to me how we don't transfer that to anything else in life. And we're supposed to have all of these things done before we do anything else. It's very interesting.
Hey, I mean, that's a bar there, and it's just up to people. Like, did you want to hear it right now, or did you need 6 months? And that's the beauty. That's a good post if you got to come back there later, no problem. But like that was powerful right there. That was definitely good. So you've alluded to the cleaning business, but do you want to actually formally introduce, or what are the actual, what are you?
Oh, sure. I don't really have. I guess it's about being my first time having like
okay, well, yeah,
whatever. But I could try a little thing. But so the cleaning business is Capital Region Maids. We're mostly residential cleaning company in the DC metropolitan region, working on some expansion to Baltimore. Although this COVID situation has kind of thrown that off a little bit. But yeah, so we I hesitate to say the value proposition, but we really try to focus on making booking really simple. I know for me as a consumer, when I need a product or a service, it's so frustrating to me that, and maybe this is the millennial in me, going on trying to patron a business and they don't have a website. I'm like, it's 2020. Like, why don't we have a website? And then if on that website, it's not simple for me to book. Like, don't make me have to go through a million hoops in order to figure out how much something costs. I don't want to have to call you to figure that out. I don't want to have to call you to figure anything out. I just want all the information that I need, what's included, how much it costs, and where do I pay? I want all of that ready and available so I can book at 2:00 in the morning if I need to. I want that. Okay. And so that is how we structured our business. We do have a phone. People can call us if they need to or they want to. We're happy to do that. But it's a where technology meets this sort of industry where and I find that with a lot of like service things, the technology hasn't really been applied yet. Yeah. So I think that kind of, helps us stand out in the market a bit, because we just make things super simple for people. Everything you need is online. But we're also there for support if they need that. Okay. So we're also learning to pivot. So with this whole COVID situation, we've actually just announced today our contactless grocery delivery service. And that's another thing you learn in business is how to pivot. You either pivot or you get lost. Right. So, just witnessing the struggles that people are having with, I guess your traditional shopping services, I'll leave it at that, with like no slots or, just other various things that are getting deliveries difficult for people who can't or don't want to leave the house during this situation. So we came up with a solution, and one that we think is also fair to our our providers who are also our cleaning professionals. But we're looking at both sides of the problems with some of those apps, with consumers not being able to get slots, and then the what are they calling it? Not the protests from the shoppers and the drivers who are feeling like they're underpaid and undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a little different of an approach to our delivery service that makes sure that they're being paid fairly, and that also allows us to keep paying people through the situation, enables them to keep taking care of their families.
Right.
And then we also have a viral disinfection service as well, so for residential and commercial businesses, so that when things open up, whenever they do, businesses can open with confidence, and consumers can, patron businesses with confidence in person, knowing that they're cleansed and disinfected properly and things of that nature. So
Okay. Nah, that's great. Having the original service and having the idea that you wanted, then getting into business and realizing this can translate to a different, to a different opportunity, or here's how you can give yourself competitive advantage based on your experience, again, because you had to get into it to see it. Or even, once you got started, then it was like, okay, I've already knocked this out. So, a lot of people think about a good idea, but now that you already got got that momentum of executing, then it became, okay, now it's time to, or there's an opportunity to move here, and I don't see, nobody's doing it the way I can think of it. So here I am. Yeah.
And I think that's a great point to like that overall mindset of just having to pivot, and it's a constant thing. Like, I think sometimes when people walk into business, you think like the hardest part is like starting, and that's not, I can understand that logic, but that's not really it. Like, every day there's something. Like, yesterday I was trying to finish the pages for these two services that I just mentioned, and I was having technical issues. I don't code, but you got to figure it out. Like, or you have to have enough money to pay someone to do it for you. I don't have that right now. So in the midst of that, I'm going to figure it out. YouTube University, you got to use your networks. You never know. And it was an easy fix, but my point to that is there always are going to be problems that you don't have the slightest clue how you're going to solve it, or you don't have the skill to fix it. But I think that goes back to our kind of earlier conversation about not feeling like you have to have all of these sort of ducks in a row. Right. Because if I felt like I needed to be a coder in order to have this cleaning business, or even a cleaner, I have never been a professional cleaner. Mm-hmm. That's not necessary to own a cleaning business, because again, my focus is on running the business and not being the business. And if I am not the business, then I don't need to know how to clean. Like, my goal is to never have to clean. Mm-hmm. I just need to be able to identify people who can do so I can hire them to do the work. Yep. So if we can separate this idea of feeling like you have to know that particular industry in order to have a business in it, like, that's not necessary in all cases. Right. You just have to know how to market. You have to know how to, sell, make connections. And really what fundamentally I'm doing is being the technology, is selling technology. Because I'm selling the customer on an experience. Like, this is going to be easier than whoever else you've worked with in the past. Right. I've done all the vetting for you in terms of the person who would clean your home. And I'm making it very easy for you to book. If you want a monthly service, you do it once and you never have to book it again. That person is just going to show up. On the cleaner side, these might be people who are like, the Picasso of cleaning, but they don't have marketing ability. They don't know how to sell themselves and their services. I know how to do that. So I'm the middle person in between someone who needs a service and someone who provides a service. And I think if we can shift our perspective in that manner, then it's a lot easier to find opportunities for you to create a business.
Yeah, it's and that comes all the way back to applying basic concepts.
Yes.
Multiple times. So it doesn't really matter, like, multiple industries that don't sound like they have anything in common with each other still operate on a similar foundation, or still should.
Yes. That's
And
false.
yeah, recognizing that, yeah, I need between yourself and myself, we both have a engineering
Mm-hmm.
background, so I think it's making it a little bit more easier. And some people don't like
Yeah.
so that's fine because we also both you and I came out into the world with a clear gap in some other kind of knowledge that we
Right.
figured out. So there's nothing to
Right.
pass that information. I wanted to say that as far as the professional life, like besides, it's just a whole big difference between 30 years ago and now. You
Yeah.
used to be able to stay in one company forever. YouTube didn't exist,
Right.
and people with with knowledge were hoarding their knowledge
Yes.
because
Yeah.
it felt like that was the key. And it seems like now these days people are more willing to share the knowledge because that's important, but
Right.
really the execution seems to
Right.
be
Right.
what
Right.
the
Right.
focus is. Because yeah, we can all know, go ahead, we can all know,
And
but you don't do
And
it.
I'm glad you brought that up because that makes me think about like this concept of like market saturation
Hmm.
and competitiveness.
Hmm.
Because with working with the guy I mentioned, and his name is Rohan Gilks.
Hmm.
Um, with working with him, he has this totally counterintuitive mindset about like an approach to business. And I don't know where we get it from, but this sort of idea that like if somebody already did it, then you shouldn't do it. And
Right.
I have definitely suffered from that
How
mindset
you do it?
because I know one business idea in particular that I had as a result of being a blogger that would have solved my own personal pain point that I know a lot of other content creators have. I thought of this idea and I was like, this would be amazing. Like maybe this is my bullet idea that I can actually make work. And I have some like knowledge in this space. And I was like, okay, well, let me do some research to see like, what exists, if anything. And I ended up coming up with all of these people who were kind of doing the same thing. And immediately I was discouraged.
Mm.
Like, I thought I had this great idea. I guess it's not that great. I'm late again on like the idea train or whatever. And I kind of like tossed the idea. And then I don't know if it was something he said, but I kind of circled back to it. And then I started talking to friends that I had who were also content creators. Like, are you feeling like you're getting what you need? Because even though these companies exist, I still have this pain point.
Right.
Like, they exist, but somehow they were not able to reach me. So I didn't even know they existed.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, for whatever reason, I'm not feeling like they still are offering what I need. Like they're not solving my issue. And they felt the same way. And so he has this concept of like, competition is like verification that the idea is solid. It's like your proof of concept.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And that to me is counterintuitive because I think sometimes, and maybe it's an ego thing, that like you want to have this idea that nobody else has thought of, so you can be the person. Like, Jamel was the first who came up with a podcast or like whatever. Maybe it's ego driven. I don't know, but like if you think of it from his mindset, it's like, all right, well, if nobody's done it, you don't even know if the market wants it. Is there a market readiness for this idea? Are they willing to pay for it even? Like, would it just be something that someone would look at and say, that's cool, but like, I don't need it. Or it's cool, but I wouldn't pay for it. Because I know some things that I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea, but I wouldn't pay somebody to do that.
Right.
I just do it myself.
Right.
So you lower your own personal risk with your money and your time. If 10 other people have already done it, that shows you there's a need for it and that people are willing to pay for it. They've already taken that risk for you. So I don't need to do it. So if I jump in that space, I also get free research because I get to go to your podcast and Susie and Joe's podcast and see exactly what you're doing, what's working for you, and hopefully identify the gaps, what's not working for you.
Yes.
And then I can craft my service and my business around what you're not doing and do it better.
Right.
And then I get to take a little slice of a pie. So it's also that plus with the concept of there's opportunity for everyone. There's money on the table for everyone. Right. And if you, I guess, go into it with the mindset that like you're not ever going to get all of the market share unless you're the only person with that idea, which comes along with a lot of risk.
Right.
So if you can accept that you're not going to have all the market share, well, how much market share would make you happy?
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, how many, products do you need to sell? How much of your service do you need to sell in order to make what you want to make? And maybe all of your revenue comes from this business, or you use this business as a jumping ground for the next business, and it's just a slice of your portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
So I think once I was able to change that, I'm like, now when I have ideas, I'm like, okay, let me see who else is doing this. Let me get into how they're doing it, what they're not doing. And, if people with that pain point feel like their needs are being served. So when I was able to do that, I still haven't moved on this idea yet, but I created a survey and I sent it to people who would have this pain point. And I said, are your needs being met? No. What are you looking for? Blah, blah, blah. What are you willing to pay for it? It's like, and when you understand that concept, it's like mind blown, but then it's also rinse and repeat. You do the same thing for every single business. And now it makes so much sense why he is a serial entrepreneur, because he literally does the same process for every single business. Is somebody else doing it? What aren't they doing well? How can I, enter this market and do what they do better? Set it up, sell it.
You go do it.
Yeah. And and his thing is I don't want anything that's going to take me years to get to the money. I want business ideas that I can get to the money as soon as possible.
Right.
So my mindset is completely different now.
Exposed. So yeah, that's Rohan Gilks. I highly encourage the rest of you all to look him up. And you know what I didn't realize? I was shocked. Another day I looked at the group. I'm like, wow, I know a couple of y'all in here. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, by all means, again, shout out to him, and then you even sharing pretty much repeating, honestly, but showing, that's the replication, showing that this information is getting through.
Right.
And is clear enough. And then after you get the information, go make it work for you. Learning just to learn is not going to do it. And so it's and even that people, it's all right, they wanted to figure everything out before they get started.
Right.
They're like, okay, I got to do that. Okay, well, now I'm going to just jump it now. There needs to be a plan, though.
Right.
Does need to be some kind of knowledge.
I think you said, oh gosh, now I can't remember. You mentioned something that I thought was a really good point. Oh, about sharing knowledge. Cause even, and I thought that was a great point, even though, so I think part of the shift is that socially people have realized that they can sell knowledge in the same way that they can sell a product, right? So you have that. Then, of course, you have people who muddy the waters with selling knowledge, but they're not really telling you how to execute something. They're just kind of telling you. I always struggle with how to explain this, but I've definitely gotten got by some people investing in courses and master classes and things like that, where people are not really telling you anything actionable that you can take from this, and I'm going to go execute these 10 steps and have a result, and as long as I put the time and the effort into it, I'm going to yield something. A lot of people are not selling that. What Rohan does is, and he's not even selling that, he gives this information away for free.
Right.
That is very valuable. He could easily sell it for a lot.
Right.
What he sells, though, is the business. So the business that he, and I won't even say he sells it, because it's not even he's requiring you to purchase any of his tools or anything like that. But because they're already there and he uses them and built them, it's a no-brainer to use what tools he's created to make this process easier. Right. Although you could go elsewhere. But that is part of the that rinse and repeat that I was talking about earlier. It was first he had this cleaning company, and then while running that cleaning company, he realized, okay, for example, I could have, what if I had a booking page that made this process way simpler, and then went and created a business around having this booking page. So it just so happens that his other businesses kind of work cohesively with I guess the total process of having a local service business. But I think, well, I don't think, I know that he has given away that information for free before those other tools existed, because that's how that Reddit post blew up. But I think that speaks to him as a person. you know, in and of itself, that he was, you know, willing to give all that information for free. But even now with these other tools in place, he's able to make some money there with people who are willing to, you know, join the process and get started. So I think that's also another way that, and I think a more ethical way, personally speaking, just as someone who's, you know, paid for different courses from different people and think that you're getting like actionable intel, you know, on something, and that's not really what you're getting, of doing that.
Right. Yeah, no, there's because it's in general, yes, you, as far as the information you have, you know, there's a lot of people that have a need. You go find a need, and so yes, if you actually have something to say and something that people can benefit from, then it is reasonable to sell it. But some of them, some of the more shadier types, do a great job of the marketing. You know,
Yes.
I got this for you. You need it, and that's really all they spent the time on. Then you get
Right.
It's like a big box, you know, gift with nothing inside.
Right. And because they are wherever you're trying to get to. So like, you know, if they're a blogger and they have 100,000 followers, you're like, okay, well, they're going to tell me how they got there.
And
it's like sometimes that's not really, and it's not necessarily, you know, the fault of whoever is doing the investing. Like you said, they're skilled at making that package, and because they again are wherever you're trying to get, you reasonably think, okay, this is how they got there, and they're about to show me how it works. No, that's not always the case. And then you have I think with this scenario, it really puts the ball back in your court. So now with all of the steps, it's really on you to execute. Like you're going to get something. I remember very early on doing it. He was like, you are going to make money in 30 days. If you do these things, you are going to make money in 30 days. And I'm just like, yeah, right. Because I've been like in so many of those scenarios where people are like, oh, you're going to get followers or you're going to get this. And it's like, okay, no, this is real. Like within 30 days of my, you know, site being up, announced, launched, I had a booking, made money. Literally, you'll wake up and be like, your phone is ringing. Oh, somebody booked a service at like 3:00 in the morning.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know? So, I mean, that's just, it's great. And now to just be able to focus on just scaling that. Like I personally have a goal. I want to be able to fire my job at the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
Goal.
Oh, this year.
Yes, I am ready to go. Been ready to go for a while. I am ready to go. Got the resignation letter in hand, signed, dated, and everything. So it's like if you just focus on doing the work, like literally round the clock, I'm balancing between doing my 9-to-5 job and running my cleaning business and getting it to scale so that I can be like, you know what? This ain't it for me no more. I'm ready to go.
I got the whole speech. You got the time that you go.
I got it all.
The whole day mapped up.
October 1, that is the goal. And you know, if it comes down to it and I can't, it is what it is. Yeah. But it's the goal, and that drives you to work hard enough to get there. And if I get there and that's not the time, then you know, that's fine. It can change.
Right. But it's something. No, it's just that optimism to know there's something better out there in the horizon to go reach for. And that's keeping it fueled. Yeah,
and that is attainable. Like
right.
It's attainable, and you know, it's great to have like a community of people who are doing the same thing regardless of where they are. But there's also other cleaning companies that I started this process with here in the DMV area, and we rely on each other a lot. Like, you know, we have technical issues. Anybody ever done this? Is anybody having this problem? How did you solve it? You know, where are you getting it's Hunger Games right now for cleaning supplies and, you know, PPE in general. That's been difficult, but, you know, with all us working together, we find one place that works, we drop the link for everybody. You know, if I have a cleaning job and I can't find, you know, none of my cleaners are available, I'm calling one of them. Do you have a team that's available for this job on this date? Like, there is enough to that competition piece. There's enough out here for all of us.
Everybody.
And one of the reasons why I love that local service model so much is because it's sort of like getting into the like mortuary business or whatever. People are always going to die. That's never going to change. I hate to sound like, you know, dark and morbid or whatever. I don't wish death on anyone, but it's a part of life.
Right.
So like in that same vein, people are always going to need somewhere to live. Every second there's a new housing scheme that's being put up. That's another potential customer. That's why the competition piece is literally just proof of concept.
Yeah.
Nothing else. There's always going to be a need for someone to cut your grass, to do your landscaping, to clean your house, to clean your business, to clean a hospital. Like there's always going to be a need for that. And if you can find a space for you to maneuver or have a business in any industry that is like that doesn't is not obsolete, it's like you don't really, you just, once you scale, you just sit back and watch the money roll in.
Right, exactly. Now I'm glad you came back to that or open up an opportunity to come back to it. There really isn't the model of primarily operating from a cutthroat standpoint is not really necessary and sets you up, because when you become, you know, people talk like reputation is important. So when you become the one that's not trustworthy, like as soon as the well of scamming people or getting over dries up, you don't have another well.
I like that, the well of scamming people. The scamming well is dry.
Yeah, when that's dry, like that didn't lead you to anything else built up.
Yeah,
you know,
no, that's true.
Kind of how you pivoted, like you can't.
That's
pivot.
true.
Yeah.
And like you said, one thing that I've definitely noticed just from like observing a lot of business spaces is that these worlds are small.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like small,
Yep.
Especially when you get to a certain level of like exposure or even success. These
Mm-hmm.
worlds are small.
Yep. So
very
it's
small.
not worth it in the long run at
It's
all.
not.
So that's beautiful to kind of hear that example, even in one of probably the toughest things we've experienced in our lifetime. And then in your industry, like industries, and still you have some with the mindset to say, well, we're going to have to figure this out together. And in the process of this one particular business, we can still put food on our table, and they can still put food on their table.
Right.
You know, and we'll be all right. We can all be all right. And we can serve, you know, because part of it, a lot of entrepreneurs do like providing a service.
Right.
You know, as well, there's some of that. We like to get paid for it, of course, but we do like making the situation better than it was. So like how you saying, what I do is education, and we're not going to have no shortage of people that need to
be. Never.
So when you find that, when you find that problem to solve, that becomes easier.
Right.
And it's like, all right, how can I keep making it better? It's like a little bit of weight.
Yeah.
A little weight off the shoulder. Like I know what I'm trying to do can work. Now just make it work.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, sometimes to me, like that clarity is of like who you're talking to, like audience wise, is the toughest part of the business, because I definitely think that's probably the toughest part of business. And it's definitely, from what I'm noticing, the difference between like a business and then like a business, like a business that's like making money hand over fist, is like their ability to communicate to their target audience and to and just have that clarity to like their pain points, where you're able to speak directly to someone's challenges with a service or a product. It's a sweet spot that like you really don't have to do much after that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, good. Listen, I think it's, plenty obvious that you have a wealth of information. There's like no shortage of both just kind of general life experiences and then industry knowledge specific to what you're doing right now. So it's, there's no need to prove that. Like we can do like a whole another hour and a half.
You.
But I think, actually, if we come back a couple of minutes ago, what you said, it's like, everybody, please feel free to go check out this Capital Region Maids.
Yes.
This is a DMV service that you plan to try to get out to Baltimore.
Yes.
Is a goal. Okay. So if you're in one of those regions, definitely check her out. And she's trying to be out. She's trying to get out and fire her job on October 1st. So.
Yes. So if you are a cleaning professional, please hit me up. I'm looking for you.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm so actually sending an email out to some of my clients this morning, explaining the 2 new services. And I was like telling them, this is all your fault. The fault that this business is able to stay in operation in the midst of a pandemic and still hire people. I hired 2 people 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So I am constantly looking for more people to hire. Fortunately for me and, the cleaning industry, this is a time where people are seeking us and our services out more than before and needing us. So that definitely helps. But I'm always looking for cleaning people, but especially now, so if you have professional cleaning experience in the DMV area, please call us, email us.
All right. So what's Capital Region Maids, the website is?
Yeah, www.capitalregionmaids.com.
Okay, just straight up that same name. Okay.
Spelled normally and all that.
Right. Okay. And it's on Facebook. What other?
Yep. So we're on Facebook at Capital Region Maids, also on Instagram, also at Capital Region Maids, and then we're also on Twitter, but it's Capital REG Maids. That was the only name.
Was that taken or was it a space?
It may have been a space thing.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but that was the closest that we could get to the name.
Gotcha. But even that, making that real simple to, we
to
have to put a Z over it.
Not capital with a K, like
right.
And I forgot we're also on Pinterest at the same name.
Capital. Oh, nice. Okay, Pinterest. Okay, all right, very good. So Tia, thank you very much. Definitely appreciate your time. Again, everybody go check out Capital Region Maids, support it. If you need services, book. If you can provide the services, reach out. And, keep supporting Black businesses, helping them grow, and get those good businesses supported too.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much for having me. This was very fun, actually.
I appreciate it. So, Smart Dumb Podcast, we're signing up. Everybody else have a great day.
Bye.